Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into real cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
I'm Megan.
And I'm Brainbath Jason.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
All right. We've got the gree out of the way. We are setting the good vibes that this episode goes off with a hitch.
Give me
Stop
the bag.
shaking
Don't look in the box.
the sack too much. As usual,
That's why
Jason
that's why they don't let
overshook
me do that.
the
More than
kangaroo
3
scrotum
times.
sack. If you're new here, hi.
We're sorry.
Yeah.
Hi.
We promise that there's not a whole lot of banter in the beginning. Stick with us. We just shake our good luck gree, which is made up of all kinds of weird shit, to be honest with you. You should go back several episodes and learn all about that, or maybe from the beginning.
About 200. About
Right.
200 episodes.
Oh, damn. We have been doing this a long time.
We have.
Speaking of doing this for a long time,
Yes, I'm really excited today.
today we are doing a redo episode of a very popular episode that we did years ago. I cannot remember what episode number it was, but it was under 100. It was quite some time ago. And the reason that we're redoing it today is because several people have recently requested that we do it now that we have the permanent fixtures of Megan and Jason.
Right.
So they would like to hear theories from Jason is extremely unfamiliar with this case. Megan, of course, heard it when I covered it the first time many years ago before you were a
Correct.
regular host on this
When
podcast.
I was just a listener.
When you were just a listener, which we loved.
I was just a little boy.
And
Don't
so,
bring in the song, please.
so this is, and you know, I know that many podcasts have picked this up. I don't know, what research they did or whatnot, or what their theories might have been. But even if you've heard this before, stick with us, because you never know what you might remember, relearn. And it is a fascinating unsolved case.
It is.
Or actually a compelling force.
Something, and we're going to get all your theories. And the reason that this is super karmic, I was telling Charnell beforehand, is because my friend James, hi James, who's a listener, had indicated, he sent me a message, said, have you ever heard of this case? And I said, not only have I heard of it, but we have covered it once before. It was just a long time ago. And this is one of those unsolved mysteries, like, of the world.
Yes.
It's going to come up, and it's not solved.
It's not solved.
So
I
wish we were coming with an update.
I know. I don't know
we're
that
not.
it ever really could be, unless something happened exactly like it again and it was filmed.
Correct.
I mean, truly, I think that would be the only way that it could possibly be solved. And it's not to take away from the victims. It's a very situation, but also mystifying. But then also karmic, it was just signs from the universe that it was time to recover this, because you had your friend, and we had a dear Patreon recently reach out, Devin. Hi, Devin.
Hi, Devin.
And say, hey, I would really love for you to recover that so we could hear Megan and Jason's theories on what happened as
I'm
well.
all for this.
Plus, just throughout the last, I would say 6 months to a year, people have randomly said, are you going to redo Dyatlov Pass? So here we are. It's time. Did you have something to say over there?
Yeah, I almost choked on my own tongue, though.
Oh.
Say the words again.
Dyatlov.
Dyatlov Pass.
Is that English?
No.
No.
Okay.
Nope.
It's in the Ural Mountains.
It sure is. You will hear all about it, my friend.
Do it.
Okay.
He's ready.
And this has been, several years have passed. In 1959, a group was formed for a skiing expedition across the northern Urals, all right, in Oblast, Soviet Union, okay? According to prosecutor Templov, documents that were found in the tent of the expedition suggests that the expedition was named for the 21st Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union and was possibly dispatched by the local Komsomol organization. Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, now called Ural Federal University, was the leader who assembled a group of 9 others for the trip, most of whom were fellow students and peers at the university. So think early 20s. These are young college students that are going to do this ski expedition trip. Each member of the group, which consisted of 8 men and 2 women, were in actual experienced grade 2 hikers with ski tour experience, which you had to be able. That was a requirement to be able to join this expedition. And upon completion, this would give them the grade 3 certification once they returned. So there was a whole more intent and purpose to this than just to say they did. At the time, this was the highest certification available in the Soviet Union and required candidates to trek 190 miles.
That's a lot.
This is a lot. This is a big
lot.
hiking expedition that has the ski component with it as well.
Through mountains.
Absolutely.
The route was designed by Igor Dyatlov's group to reach the far northern region of Oblast and the upper streams of the Lozya River. The route was approved by the actual City Route Commission, okay, which makes sense that they would
You
have to
present your
approve.
plan,
Mhm.
and they need to know like where you're when you're going to be there, right? Hikers have to do that all the time still here. When you're going to go hike certain trails, you have to let the warden know and let them know what your plan is, especially if it's going to be like multi-day trip.
Yep. And the actual name of the group was a committee. They're called the Committee of Physical Culture and Sport. And so that
Very official.
Yes, it was. That would say, I'm sure they were experts, probably the level 3 expeditionists, right? And so they confirmed that they had agreed to allow a group of 10 people on January 8th, 1959 to undertake this expedition. And the goal was to reach at Orton, a mountain that was 6.2 miles north of the site where this incident that we're going to talk about today occurred. Okay, so they had their planning points, they had their resting points. All of it was documented and had to be approved. So we, other people would know what their goal, their daily goal was, where they were going to reach, things like that.
Presumably, if there's other hikers in the region too, then that might be in that area who also have plans.
Yes. Yep. All right. Now, this route that they took in February was estimated as a category 3, which is the most difficult to traverse. So they were confirmed and allowed to go on January 8th, but the area where this incident happened, this was like one of the most dangerous areas, and that was planned for them to reach in February. Okay.
And just to put this into perspective, that time of year, we're talking in that time frame, the Soviet Union in the mountains in Russia, like it's snowy, it's cold.
Yes.
We're not talking about the Smokies.
That would be considered extreme.
Correct.
Hence the category 3 that they were
Rating
trying to
on
reach. On January 23rd, 1959, the Dyatlov group was issued their route book, which listed their course as following the number 5 trail. And at that time, the City Committee of Physical Culture and Sport listed an approval for actually 11 people. The 11th person listed was Semyon Zolotorov, who was previously certified to go with another expedition of similar difficulty, but then joined the Dyatlov group.
Okay.
So
this isn't like a leader or a guide. This is somebody who was going to get his level 3 in a different group, but decided to join the Dyatlov group.
Yep.
So they don't know him as well.
No, and he was going to be in the Sagarin expedition group that left earlier. He did not go, so he was placed with the Dyatlov group. So they left the city on the same day that they received their route book. So January 23rd, 1959. And on January 25th, 1959, they then took a truck to a city, which it had a lorry village. I'm intentionally not naming these cities, you guys, because even with Google Translate, it wasn't great, and I'm not going to butcher it and have people all mad.
We know the general area.
Yes. And honestly, the names of these specific places aren't where this happens. And so it just know they were in a little lorry village that is the last inhabited settlement of the north before you head into the mountains. Okay.
It just makes me think of like Everest, Jason, right?
Yeah.
Where you have like your final, like your base camp.
Yes.
And then after that, you're like done. There's no human civilization, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And they didn't have 1959. It's not like they had GPS on them.
No, I'm not sure what
Or-
they would have had. I don't think they had anything for communication on a hike like this. Anyway, that's why they did the plans, right? So somebody would know where they could potentially
any kind
be.
of communication
course
radio
book.
that they would have had would have been like even military grade in the 50s was not.
Yeah, and maybe there was something. I don't know if we get into a list, and I know it's one of the things been questioned about, like lists of items, things that
But
were
that's
packed,
not like
things that
that's
they
not
had.
something you stuff in your pocket either.
No, for
Like,
sure.
That's a person you have to carry. Like that's one person carrying all that crap just for communicating.
Yeah.
if
Right.
They would even do that.
And think about the necessary means for like extraction at
Right.
that point too. Like if somebody got in trouble.
I don't think there were options.
I mean,
Just
I'm
leave
hoping
you
maybe
there.
there was some type of a check-in point, but I mean,
Yes, they did.
We're gonna get
They
there.
were going to have check-in points, yes. So they spend their last night in this last inhabited settlement. They purchased and ate loaves of bread to keep their energy levels up for the following day's hike. Okay?
carb loading.
Yep. On January 27th, they begin their trek toward the Gora Atorin. On January 28th, one member, Yuri Yudin, suffered from several health ailments, like he had rheumatism and a congenital heart defect.
This does not sound like something that makes it conducive for you to get your level
No.
3 hiking.
Nope. So he turned back due to knee and joint pain, and that made him unable to continue the hike. I mean, he had like rheumatoid arthritis type stuff. The
His
remaining,
body was telling him
Why would
to
you
turn
think
around.
you could start that
Absolutely.
hike?
absolutely. I don't know. Well, he was already a level 2.
My guess is, he's probably been
so-
a hiker for quite a while, but he's still in his early 20s, right? He's like a young guy.
Yeah, they all
That's why,
are.
Jason. He's been a
But-
good hiker up until that point. Hadn't had any issues probably with his heart to that point, but the rheumatism was setting in.
Right. Well, and I mean,
Listen, have you ever started a hike and you made it halfway ththrough and you're like, "Fuck, I'm done"?
Yeah,
I have-
those are called my stairs.
Oh no, I'm a hiker. So like I'm going to go hike at the end of July in the Smokies. I have a 16-mile hike planned. And I know that at some point in time, about 5 miles into it, I'm going to go, why? I have to live here now.
right. And
I can't move.
hope that they can get some communications to me. I'm going to podcast from here.
It's possible if I don't see y'all again. I hope it's not a Dyatlov Pass incident.
Well, I hope not too, or something more random and like you slipping and falling and injuring yourself.
Far more likely. Or the Bigfoot.
So this guy, well, and I will say, like, my husband has a congenital heart defect, and he played like softball when he really wasn't advised to.
When he was young.
Yes, when
Well,
he was
and-
in his 20s,
and in his
into
20s and
in
30s.
Mm-hmm. So I can see this guy being like, I'm going to overcome my ailments here, and then realizing, no, I'm not. I'm going to
turns around.
stick. I'm going to stay being a level 2
Okay.
certified.
And just to point this out now, where we're keeping track of things, there hadn't been any arguments with anybody. Nobody said, hey, dickhead, you can't come with us because you're slowing us down. He voluntarily turned back. There weren't any fights
Correct.
or anything that we're aware of.
yeah, it
And
was
the
his
last-
ailments that made him turn around.
And the last time he saw them all, when he turned around, everybody was in good shape and good health, right?
Yes. Yes. Diaries and cameras that are found later around their last campsite made it possible to track the group's route up to the day before the incident. So we know on January 31st, the group arrived at the edge of the highland area and began to prepare for actual climbing in a wooded valley. So they had a surplus of food and equipment that would be used for the trip back. The next day, the hikers started to move through the pass. It seems that they planned, by the way, the surplus of food and equipment, they actually like cached. Okay, so they kept it there. So they wouldn't have to carry it through the whole trek and come down.
Yeah, I'm sure they left quite a bit of equipment at that point in time, camping equipment. Because this next part of the trek isn't supposed to be as long, right? This is just the 6 miles.
It's 6 miles climbing.
Straight up a mountain.
Climbing. Mm-hmm. The next day, the hikers start to move through the pass, and it seems that they plan to get over the pass and make camp for the next night on the opposite side of the pass. But because of worsening weather conditions, snowstorms, and decreasing visibility, they lost their direction and deviated west toward the top of a different mountain.
And this was not on the submitted plan.
It was not. This is not on their course book. When they realized their mistake, the group decided to set up camp there on the slope of the mountain rather than move the almost mile downhill to a forested area that would have offered some shelter from the weather.
That was a bad decision.
Yeah.
But I imagine it was hopefully shadowed by the fact that the weather was so bad, the visibility was bad, they didn't trust themselves to move.
No, they realized we are not on the right course anymore, and the weather conditions are worsening. So,
but how do we know that this is what they're thinking? Is this because of things
the
in
diaries and the
point?
cameras?
So someone is keeping track, and
Yes.
there are photographs.
Yeah.
All right.
We know this from the diaries and the cameras, and they not trusting their direction, and with the visibilities being low, they may not have realized that it was only about a mile down to that wooded area. We can't trust that they actually could gauge that distance appropriately.
When there's a blizzard and it's snowing and there's no visibility and you're on a mountain where you could fall to your death.
And you realize we've been going the wrong way, but we don't know exactly how far the wrong way and we've been going the wrong way because of the weather conditions. I wouldn't trust. I'd stop and stay too. I don't trust myself until this weather clears up.
That's what they tell us as young children. If you're lost, stay where you are.
Right. So, Mr. Yurted, that I mentioned before, speculated in the diary, Igor Dyatlov probably did not want to lose the altitude that they had gained, or he decided to practice camping on the mountain slope, which is an important skill to learn too. There's that theory. That's him speculating. Okay.
I feel like that's his way of saying, I'm not a super big fan of what our expedition leader has decided to do here.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to read sarcasm into probably what was clearly written in Russian.
Right.
I know how I would be thinking at that point, stuck on the side of a mountain a mile from safety.
Now remember,
I might make the trek back. I'm going to be honest. I'm not saying I'm going to listen to the adage that you stay where you are when you're lost. In that situation, I might be like, fuck you guys. I'm out.
And I don't know. I mean, I think for them there was safety in numbers, and
there was. But could we agree that there might have been some disagreement at this point in time, or at least frustration with the situation?
Discord amongst the group when they're trying to decide what they're doing, where they are, and what they should even do. And even if they knew that the wooded area was a mile away, in those conditions, they probably didn't trust that they would find it. And a mile hike in those conditions would take an hour.
Much longer. Yeah. It's not. We're
much
not
faster
talking
if you fall.
Well, yeah, just start rolling down the hill.
Well,
I guess
there's that possibility as well.
For sure. It's not like they're. Yeah. Remember the mountain that they're trying to reach for this part of the trek, the Arten mountain that I kept stumbling over there. The translation literally means don't go there. So there was a very well-known tribe, the Mansi tribe. They named this as a warning to literally not go there, but they literally went anyway. So Yuri Udin was the only survivor because he is the person who came really sick in the last town that they traveled to, remember? And he said that he was watching Igor talk with a local the night before they set out to continue their hike, and it looked as though the local was warning him against something, but he's unsure of what it was. Perhaps the fact that the Mansi tribe, a tribe that is native to the land, tells modern civilization to not go there. And you know how humans never learn from those that came before us, right? So February 1st, we know they set up camp at the bottom of a slope on a mountain called Mountain of the Dead.
Okay, So I'm going to stop you here because we have had cases where we've talked before about indigenous people and indigenous tribes naming things on purpose because they don't want you there or think you should be there or they're sacred. Literally forbidden forests, forbidden mountains. The name here is ominous enough. And we did talk about, here's the time you're going to hear me bring up something mystical because I did the Bennington Triangle case from Vermont. There are these triangles or areas all over the world that are mysterious places where weird, unexplained things happen that the local natives know better than to fuck with. And they just deviated to a part of the mountain that they weren't planning on going to, that the indigenous people were like...
It's called the Mountain of the Dead.
It's the Mountain of the Dead.
And the name of the mountain... or the place that the mountain they're trying to get to is called Don't Go There.
Right. Don't go there, mountain.
Like everything about this says, no, let's not do this. Also, fun fact, triangles are very powerful, for lack of a better word, but energetic. Portal is a word that's going to scare people. But
portal is the word that came up when I covered this other case, and that's me as a skeptic.
But it truly, truly is the power. There's a big power in the power of the number 3. There are 3 points to a triangle. It all very much makes sense to me in the knowledge that I have.
And I just think it all goes back to if the people that are from there, the indigenous population that is from there, are saying don't fucking go there.
Don't fucking go there.
But they didn't have a choice. They did not know at this point that they were in a super bad juju spot.
That's right.
But they were also headed to a moderately bad juju spot anyway, right?
They were.
Okay.
They were. They were all in good spirits from what we can tell from their last diary entries. They even made up their own little newspaper, and one of the titles on it was, well, now we know snowmen exist.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what it said. That's very interesting once you find out, Jay, what happens to them.
I don't love any of that description.
That they would say, well, now we know snowmen exist.
Yeti.
Right. This was not...
I want you to keep that in mind because I'm going to go with the logical, most explained conclusion to what happens here because to me it makes sense scientifically, but I'm open to our discussion about the abominable snowman,
I'm going to go with the most irrational, fucked up thing we can think of.
Welcome to my world.
What is odd is that they are in Siberian wilderness, and although Siberia is known for common avalanches, this particular place had not had one in a very long time. But these are experienced mountain ski hikers, is what I'm trying to say. And they should have known that it's not a good idea in the Camping 101 to set up camp at the bottom of a slope. It's way colder at the bottom of a slope also.
Things move downward because gravity.
Yes, exactly. We have gravity. We have the fact that it's colder there. Also at night, it's much colder in Siberia, right? So February 12th is when the group was supposed to make contact with the sick Yuri, okay, and family and friends. But no one heard from them. And no one was super concerned until February 20th.
How many days was that?
Well, they were supposed to check in the 12th.
That's a lot of days.
But
I would have been concerned, though, after about 2.
Hiking can take a lot longer than anticipated.
Listen, I've been there. It was a 2-hour hike, and it lasted 6. I've been there. It's Gilligan's Island.
And I think on expeditions like this, Megan, they just know things can absolutely go awry, and you may need to sit weather out for a couple days. Even.
Okay. So, and they supposedly had plenty of food.
They did.
To sustain them for those extra days. So it's not until the 20th when they're like, dude, they should probably be running out of food and stuff at this point.
Yep. So the search and possible rescue starts around the 21st, but the campsite was not located until February 26th. Just to give you some perspective, they set up camp on February 1st.
Jeez, ow.
We know they set up the 1st. And
this is over 3 weeks.
The camp is not located until February 26th.
And how is it located, Charnell?
The military, local authorities, and volunteers were all a part of the social rescue. They did not employ, I added the word not, I'm sorry. They did employ helicopters and things as well. Now I'm going to take you step by step through what they found at the campsite. Are you ready for this, Jay? You have no idea what is about to embark in your brain right now.
I can't wait.
They discovered the tent, but it had been shredded from the inside out. They did not unzip the tent. They literally shredded their way out of the tent. That's fact number 1. Number 2, they were barefoot or just in socks and had one shoe on. Some had one shoe on. All of the footprints went in different directions as if they scattered in a panic. And it should be noted that it would have been at night around 30 degrees below zero. The report, the official report, said that night, if we go by February 21st, February 1st, when we know they set up camp, it was -24 that night. It is assumed this happened at night because they were all clearly in the tent in various states of their sleep clothing, not their regular everyday hiking garb. The first 2 bodies were actually found 1 mile away from the tent, which, how do you walk on bare or sock feet for an entire mile in -24 degree temperatures? The first 2 were found were, and apologies for the name slaughtering that could possibly take place right now, Dora Shanenko and Krivalenshenko.
Are those the females?
They were lying
We don't know.
perfectly side by side in nothing but their underwear. They were under a large pine tree, and branches that were really high up, like where we're talking 15 feet up, were broken and found to have human skin and blood on them. There was also the remnants of a small fire that had been made at some point in this same area. Their hands were scratched, like really bad, like bloody messes. So they feel that they obviously had tried to climb the tree. Investigators believe that they may have been trying to see where the camp was from where they were, or perhaps looking for others. But they are a mile away from the camp, and there is human skin on these tree branches. That these trees are not normal
15
trees.
feet
They're
in the air.
15 feet in the air, and these branches are on the ground with them, with human skin on them. Now, what is weird here is that it looks like they were frantic to get up the tree with the cuts on their hands and skin and blood on the tree, as if to get away from something, and then they made a fire, or they made a fire before they were frantic to get up the tree. Obviously, we don't know. Even more strange is that Doronchenko, I can say it.
It was great.
When I'm not trying, Doronchenko had burns on the left side of his head. Burns. His ears, nose, and lips were covered in blood. He had multiple bruises and cuts on his arms, legs, and torso, and he had a foamy gray discharge on his mouth and face, which doctors later say could be caused when an extreme amount of pressure is made in the chest.
Crush injury. Asphyxiation.
Yeah. Now, Krivalenshenko had bruises on his forehead and left temporal bone, bruises on his chest, legs, and his hands. There was skin missing from the top of his hands that were found inside his mouth. His hands were found inside his mouth.
Like pieces of his hand?
No.
Like his hand?
His hands.
Like
No,
detached?
not bite marks. He did not bite his own skin off. It was like shredded off. He also had a burn on his left leg. How are these men getting burned by the fire? What caused them to climb a tree in a hurry? Which came first, the climbing or the fire? Why are they in their undies? Their cause of death was determined to be hypothermia. Between the pine where Doronchenko and Krivalenshenko were found and the camp, the searchers found 3 more bodies. Igor Dyatlov, the body of Kolmogorova and Slobodin.
Where was this again?
This is found between the pine trees and the camp.
Okay.
The pine trees where the two, where Doronchenko and Krivonchenko were found.
So they're about halfway in between.
They are.
Base camp and the fire in the trees.
Yep. They died in poses suggesting that they were attempting to return to the tent. They were found at distances of 300, 480, and 630 meters, or 980, 1570, or 2070 feet from the tree. It literally looks as though they fell right there dead as they were making their way back to the site. They just died. Igor Dyatlov was found face up and frozen in a position where he had a birch branch in one hand and shielding his face from something in the other. He had no internal injuries, but his cause of death was hypothermia. He and Kolmogorova were dating, by the way, and there was a photo of her and him in the clothes that he had on, that he was found in. There is a photo from the camera of them together in those same clothes. Now, Slobodin was found face down in the snow with blood exiting from his nose, and he had a lot of cuts and bruises on his face, as well as a deep fracture to his skull. And although that would hurt like a bitch, it would not have been fatal. He had bruises on the joints of both of his hands, and his skin was completely ripped off from one of his forearms, indicating that he was possibly fighting something or someone off, kind of like Igor Dyatlov having a branch in his hand like he was defending himself. He also had hemorrhages in his temporal muscles around, according to the autopsy, and likely causing him to lose coordination and functioning after whatever force hit him. So this muscle is situated along the side of our head, and his cause of death was determined to be hypothermia, like Igor Dyatlov. Now, Kolmogorova was found the farthest from the other two, from Dyatlov and Slobodin there. She's the other female, and she had blood around her body that were both hers and possibly others, but it couldn't scientifically be determined. Her autopsy showed her cause of death as hypothermia due to a violent accident, like how Slobodin, with the head injury, likely wasn't able to regain his coordination enough to shelter from the cold.
So disoriented enough or injured enough that you can't move, and you died probably within an hour or so in negative temperatures.
She was injured enough that she wouldn't have been able to seek shelter, so she died of hypothermia ultimately. So it was determined all of the victims at this point in time had died of hypothermia, and that is the narrative that was being reported and thought of at this time. But unfortunately, it would take almost 3 months before the remaining 4 victims would be found, because they had to literally wait for spring and for the mountain to thaw before they could be found. So the last 4, and I'll go through their names later, but I'm just using their last names right now. The last 4 were Brignoles, Dubinina, Zolotarov, and Kolvatov. And they were found along a creek that ran down a slope away from the tree that the first 2 men were found. So think of, if you can picture this, there is so there's this creek that slopes away from the tree. The remaining 4 victims are found near there. Then there's the tree where the first 2 victims are found. And then halfway between the campsite that they all came from and that tree were the other 3 victims. So they're just kind of in these very weird, but they're with someone else. No one was found singularly. Well, that's what I find interesting. They're grouped in these various locations, not super far from one another, but far enough when you consider the negative temperatures and whatnot. Okay. So, along this creek, now their injuries really started to change the narrative of the incident, which at this point had seemed like the group had run away from something in camp and died of hypothermia. This group of people, however, had some weird ass shit going on.
Oh, yeah.
Their causes of death were not hypothermia, and they were wearing clothes, a lot of clothes. Some even ripped and tattered that belonged to some of the other hikers in the group. They believe that it is possible that they took clothing off from some of the other deceased, which would explain the two lying side by side in their undies.
Right. Like they'd been placed there and stripped of their clothing.
Because they were already gone.
Right.
This
well, hopefully.
Right. Right. Exactly. It's one of the theories. Okay. They had dug into the ground and the snow around them to stay warm, which is a hiker survival strategy. And they placed branches around the snow-covered walls to help separate their body from the actual snow. Also a strategy, right? To me, this says these 4 lived longer than the rest of the group, the first round, right?
I think that's almost accepted at this point.
They also had a small fire as well. So Dr. Boris Zolvendeny did an autopsy on these 4 victims, and they had such extensive internal injuries that the good doctor compared it to a severe car accident. But they had very little, if any, external soft tissue damage, unlike the others. What does not add up to me here is that it seems like this group of people were not experiencing one event. The 3 that were found seemingly walking back to the camp had no internal injuries, but did have external injuries, but no evidence that they made a fire or anything of that sort. The first 2 had time to make a fire, had external injuries, and at some point were in that tree. These 4 have had time to dig in the snow like a little cave, build a fire, and take clothes off the others, and then die of extensive internal injuries without external injury. So it could not have been one single event causing these deaths, right?
Agreed. I
Like,
think
this
there were a
is just
couple of
very-
things going on.
Yeah, very weird. Zolotarov had a significantly completely caved in chest and broke 5 ribs on each side. Like everything was broken in his chest, and he had no external damage. Where is the bruising? Where's the soft tissue damage? Then, to make things even more strange, he was missing his eyeballs. Gone. His peepers, Jason.
I'm watching his face.
I mean,
They're gone.
And there's no evidence that they were like dug out of
No.
his face with like claw marks.
Or eaten or anything
right, because there
like
would be
that.
animal evidence.
There would be. There's no animal evidence that
But what
eyeballs
large
were-
mammals would possibly be living at that altitude in minus 29? I think most
Right.
things would probably stay. Although you are in the tree lines now, and you're in Siberia, and there's bears.
bears and birds.
But a bear would leave a clearly impressionable imprint on the outside
a bear,
of the body.
A bear wouldn't just eat your eyes.
No.
They're not that articulate.
A bird
and birds are
potentially
gonna-
could,
but
but
they're
are they going to
gonna
leave?
leave-
Are they going to leave remnants? Of the pecking.
Yeah.
They're not just
Probably.
going to pluck it out and fly away.
Right.
No.
Would the extreme temperatures affect external injuries or evidence of external injuries?
That's a wonderful
I
question.
think.
Did they not have bruising
think
because
they
they were in the cold so long and it healed?
I think it would preserve. I mean, I think that
I don't think
whatever
it stops
happens to
bruising.
you in the
First of all, you turn blue.
well, right. I think in the immediate, whatever would happen though is just kind of that instant freezing. I mean, once your body stops pumping blood, which is instantaneous upon death, you're gonna freeze within a matter of minutes. Your whole body.
Right.
And
so
so
those
you're gonna
4
be
people,
preserved
those
in-
4 people that were wearing everyone's clothes.
Was there time for bruising to happen? For lividity to set in when you freeze before rigor mortis can even set in?
But if they suffered injuries they had internal injuries and his chest was crushed, but there's no external evidence or no signs of external injuries, could it have happened days before
Yes.
and then healed faster because of the cold?
I don't know that it necessarily healed. I do think that my personal opinion about those, and I'll get to my entire theory on it, but I think my personal opinion on those guys is that those injuries did occur not right then and there at that time of death. I think that they occurred prior.
Right.
Is it odd that there's not external, bruising? Yeah, but what state are we in now with human popsicles who've been there for 3.5 weeks, almost a month?
No, We had to wait for
These
mountain
ones were found later
They
after a thaw.
Yeah, they were found after we had to at least get to, it's not completely thawed by any means, but it wasn't the extreme winter temperatures
So yeah,
anymore.
Jason, if they were to have lived in a longer amount of time, even where you had indicated bruises actually healed, but they still had all of those internal injuries.
I don't know that with that extensive of internal injuries.
Crushed chest injury, that's hard.
I don't think you live very long.
No,
with
not
that.
long enough for bruises to heal,
Yeah.
because bruises take a long
Also,
time.
no eyes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Which you would have, oh, God. Let's hope that he was gone when that happened.
So
There was also an open wound that was exposing bone on the side of his head as well, by the way. So he has no eyes and an open head wound. The autopsy actually compared the wounds of Zolotarov and Dubinina because their pattern of injuries were so similar in force, direction, and an injury that could not have been caused by a singular event, like, say, a weather event, because they are two very different people in height, shape, weight, and body composition. So
I kind of disagree with that.
Well, I'm not an expert. They're saying like an avalanche.
Yeah,
like
I'm still an
hit.
avalanche. It's part of my theory. You can't say that both people are going to have the same injuries from the avalanche, because I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but that snow takes you in different directions, and you could end up hitting or coming into contact with different things.
And that's how you could end up in a tree.
When being thrust on a mountain, or climbing one goddamn quickly as it's coming at you.
And that maybe that tree didn't seem so high when an avalanche is.
Or maybe when you're in the branches and the avalanche is passing by, you fucking fall out of it on the branches, leaving your skin and blood on the way down.
That was a thought but.
And the people that did live just a little bit longer came back for survival purposes and took your clothing off you because you're laying there dead.
Well, we'll get into these.
Oh,
these
I
things.
know.
Zolotarov even had his camera on his body. But why though? This was why did he still have his camera with him if this was like a sudden event? Okay. Even more strange is that Yuri, the lone survivor that was with the group, said he'd never seen the camera before. It was not a part of the hiker's gear, and it was a secret camera that Zolotarov had, which comes into play later with one of the theories. Because remember, everything's accounted for hiking like this as a group, as an expedition.
Who was the guy that wasn't originally with the group or scheduled to be with the group?
The guy who was joined later because he was supposed to go with another group was Zolotarov. Yeah, but he.
I see your wheels are churning.
But and you know, I mean, I'm sure he's not the first person to sneak an item that they're not supposed to have, you know, necessarily as a group or approved to carry.
Do you want a theory now?
She's absolutely taking her comfort item.
No, because we're not done yet.
Okay.
But don't worry, that theory comes into play. I know right where you're going with it, and it does come up. Anywho, okay, so the film from that camera was never developed because the investigators claimed that the film was damaged, and some think that perhaps that's a cover-up, and that was BS. Now, the
Government
woman...
conspiracy.
What is known about this Solitari?
We're going to get there.
Did I say that right?
No,
Zolotarov.
That was close.
Yeah, Zolotarov. Not much.
I watched a lot of gymnastics.
Dubinina was found wearing a short sleeve shirt, a long sleeve shirt, 2 sweatshirts, undies, 2 long pair of pants, a hat, 2 pair of socks, and a cut-up sweater that was wrapped around her feet. The outer layer of pants were burned, which perhaps means she took them off from Krivonchenko, who had a burn on his left leg. She also had the worst injuries. Her mouth was opened like she'd been screaming, and her head was tilted, and she had bone exposed over her left temporal lobe area and did have soft tissue damage on her face. She was missing some skin, which might have been from frostbite, but she was also missing her eyes, and her upper lip was gone completely, exposing her teeth and gums. And her tongue had been torn out from the root. It was yanked out. Yanked out. Her nose was flattened, and she had 4 broken ribs on her right side and 6 on her left. She had a massive hemorrhage in her heart, which was her actual cause of death.
We don't know the order that these people died in either,
Right.
just
Right.
clearly. We know the order they were found in.
On top of the heart hemorrhage, she had a huge bruise on her thigh, and her stomach had a bunch of blood in it, which tells them that her heart was pumping when she had her tongue ripped out of her mouth, which also dispels the theory that animals later did this. Also, if you just did a quick wiki search on this, it claims that they were found at the bottom of a stream and missing parts were from water and wildlife. But once you read the actual investigation and autopsy report, it shows that they were under snow and by a creek, not underwater in the creek. The third victim here, Kolatov, his autopsy wasn't very telling. He had a broken nose and what was called a neck deformity, which was his cause of death. So he broke his neck. He was also missing his eyebrows. These are very keep track of this. We've got 2
Missing
people without their
how?
eyeballs,
Like shaved off, burned off,
just
plucked out,
missing eyebrows. That's all it said. Don't know if the skin came with it.
frostbite.
Don't know if the skin came with it. Just no eyebrows. We've got a tongue yanked out. We've got 2 people missing their eyes. We have random forearm skin ripped off.
I think it's safe
Upper lip gone.
to assume that the people with the most clothes on died last, because you wouldn't put your clothes on someone else and then leave. You wouldn't kill someone then dress them more. I mean, as weird as all the other stuff is, I think that would be pretty odd.
Especially not when
But-
you're a survivalist.
But Dyatlov and his girlfriend, they're heading back, presumably up the mountain, and are found kind of allegedly dead, how they, just dropped dead. They're not naked or missing clothes. So the only people that are actually missing their clothes are the 2 that
Those
were
2
dead at the
guys by
bottom of the
by
tree.
the tree. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, Briganoli had fractures in his temporal skull and bruising in his upper lip and a fracture of his forearm. That's all he had. Every single of the last 4 bodies had the same complete crushing of their chest, though, even though they had different body weights, heights, and composition. The crushing of the chest was the same in all 4 of them.
So-
and then there's those extra injuries that we just went over.
So if you and I were in an avalanche, would we have different kind of injuries?
According to the experts,
Okay.
yes.
I think that's fair because, again,
Well-
you're depending on your body makeup and what you're hitting on the way down. I mean, think about what the avalanche is doing. You're not. You're just not.
I mean,
traveling on top of the snow.
I got a fun theory, but
Okay.
most of this does
And-
say avalanche.
It does.
I mean, that's the easy way out.
But I don't think that you have to just believe there was an avalanche.
No.
Here. And that's where this entire case always leads you. And I mean, I don't think it's any shock that the official on it from what 2020 is avalanche, right? I mean, that's what they want you to believe.
That's what they want you to believe. There's been a lot of weather experts, however, though, that have said there's a lot of evidence to say that there was
Right.
no avalanche.
But they are saying that in this case, it was a what type of avalanche is that?
they're just calling it a compelling natural force.
The truth is out there, Mulder.
But here's the thing.
A slab avalanche.
The problem with the avalanche theory for most people is that the landscape around when the first 5 victims were found did not indicate that an avalanche had happened.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I think an avalanche would be an excuse or theory of how those people ended up in the trees. But if the trees aren't damaged extensively, which they probably
They
would be.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they look at the whole ecosystem. They look
Right.
at everything around, and there wasn't compelling evidence to say that we could conclusively say there was an avalanche, but they're just going to say the official determination has been avalanche because
I think it's possible, though, that they could have climbed the tree, escaping the direction the avalanche was going if it wasn't going to them, and that no one said they fell out of the tree and died. There was just evidence
Right.
that the branches broke and there was skin and blood up the tree, right?
Yes.
We just know they were dead at the bottom.
Yeah. And naked. They're in their undies.
And naked.
They're in their undies.
So
But
it does say, and I don't know if we have a map of it to look it out. I'm sure plenty of people does it. But if an avalanche happened to have occurred, they said it was likely on the eastern slope of Koyat Saki, about 5,600 feet away from the tent site.
for sure.
And that's 1,700 meters. I'm a feet people, though, but
Yeah.
that's a long distance,
It is.
too.
So let's go back to the fact, though, that what was striking to the experts here is the way that their chests were completely crushed the same exact way, no matter what the different size and shape and composition is to them. Also, it was determined that all 9 hikers had died within 6 to 9 hours after their last meal.
Okay, so we don't have when they died in that month, but that we do know that they died within 6
to 9 hours after their last meal.
Do we know what their last meals were?
I don't.
Tongue?
No, they did
Eyeballs?
not. Nope. Not that I've not
I'm
seen
just
anything
saying.
like
What'd you
that.
say?
Tongue, eyeballs.
Oh.
Remember the tongue?
I
We
was gonna
know.
say-
It's my
I was
theory.
my
One of them.
thought earlier was like bad mushrooms.
Weird. That's
Like-
an interesting theory.
Well-
You're the only person I've heard go to tripping.
Well, when they're
Tripping on the psilocybin.
Okay, so if
Well,
they,
the
if they
girl's
tor-
tongue was ripped out of her mouth while she was alive.
Before the crushed.
Crushed.
Wow.
Oh fuck.
Wow.
The crushed chests. Prior to that,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of this. I mean, if it weren't for the extreme temperatures on alpine hiking, a lot of that screams like bath salt behavior.
Right.
Ripping
but-
your eyes out,
Well,
the forearm skin
freaking
missing.
out in a tent and shredding
know.
through the tent and running around like just without your gear.
What's interesting to me, do you guys realize how many times I said someone had a front temporal lobe injury?
Yeah, the front.
Yeah.
Right here. On
There's
the
a
floor.
lot of head injuries here.
Yeah, like people either assaulted each other
Yeah.
or things went south.
Right,
I
or
can
they
tell you
ran
that
into
if
things.
I heard something in the middle of the night or in the middle of a snowstorm that set off potentially an avalanche, I would too claw my way out of the tent, disoriented and not able to see what happened. And I have a theory.
And they might not have
but
been
you
able to
haven't
see the zipper.
You haven't disclosed one of the most important parts of this yet, so
Well-
I'm reluctant to bring things up.
I'm still on things here. So
I
we've
know.
got the meal.
There's just so much more we need.
Yeah. February 2nd, we know everyone was happy and normal from the cameras that they were able and willing to
Just like people on Facebook.
recover. Yeah, yeah. Well, they recovered, what they did recover and develop from the cameras. February 2nd, they were still alive. They set up that camp February 1st. Kolatov had a personal diary that he had on him at all times. That was a well-known thing about this expedition. The diary was never found. Now, Yuri even said that he always had it with him. And Yuri was, a part of this group until he got too sick to carry on. So
we
that's
did have
weird.
journals found from the one guy who's documenting, in my opinion, some less than satisfied concern about where they were setting up
Well,
camp.
Yuri had a journal too before he was no longer with the group.
Right. But this other person,
there were a couple other people that had diaries.
which clearly came up missing.
No,
Or at least
a couple
were
of
never
diaries have been used to compel
Right.
all of this stuff, but not
Him.
Kolatov.
Thank you. I couldn't remember his name because these are really hard names to
I know,
remember. I
know.
couldn't even say name. That's how bad it is.
Very difficult for us Americans who butcher every other language besides English. At the time, the official conclusion was that the group members had died because of a compelling natural force, so avalanche or even hurricane winds.
Blizzard.
Yep.
Good.
The official inquest, the investigation, stopped in May 1959 as a result of the absence of a guilty party, and the files were sent to a secret archive. But before I take you into theories other than an avalanche, let me tell you a couple of things that have happened since. In 1997, it was revealed that the negatives from Krivonovchek's, I'm saying it wrong. I see I could say it right earlier. Hold on. Krivonchenko, sorry. Camera were kept in the private archive of one of the investigators, Lev Ivanov. The film material was donated by Ivanov's daughter to the Dyatlov Foundation in 1997. The diaries of the hiking party fell into Russia's public domain in 2009. On April 12th, 2018, Zolotov's remains were exhumed on the initiative of journalists of the Russian tabloid newspaper, not going to say it right, Komsomolska Pravda.
Nailed it.
Yeah, right. Contradictory results were obtained. One of the experts said that the character of the injuries resembled a person knocked down by a car, and the DNA analysis did not reveal any similarity to the DNA of living relatives. His body was exhumed, but his DNA doesn't match his living relatives. In addition, it turned out that Zolotov's name was not on the list of those buried at the cemetery where the rest of the victims were buried. Nevertheless,
so they buried someone. This is what they're speculating. They buried someone else, called it Zolotov, and his body remains someplace else.
Yeah, the one whose diary couldn't be found, and the one who was a random add-on to the group. The reconstruction of the force from the exhumed skull matched post-war photographs of Zolotov, although journalists expressed suspicions that another person was hiding under his name after World War II. In February 2019, Russian authorities reopened the investigation into the incident, although only 3 possible explanations were being considered: an avalanche, a slab avalanche, or a hurricane. The possibility of a crime had been discounted. On July 11th, 2020, Andrei Kuryakov, deputy head of the Urals Federal District of the Prosecutor's General Office, announced an avalanche to be the official cause of death for the Dyatlov group in 1959. Later, independent computer simulation and analysis by Switch researchers also suggested that an avalanche could have been the cause. But here's some evidence contradicting the avalanche theories. The location of the incident did not have any obvious signs of an avalanche having taken place. An avalanche would have left certain patterns and debris distributed over a wide area. The bodies found within a month of the event were covered with a very shallow layer of snow, and if there had been an avalanche of significant strength to sweep away the second party, these bodies would have been swept away as well. This would have caused more serious and different injuries in the process and would have damaged the tree line. Over 100 expeditions to the region had been held since the incident, and none of them ever reported conditions that might create an avalanche. A study of the area using an up-to-date terrain-related physics revealed that the location was entirely unlikely for such an avalanche to have occurred. The dangerous conditions found in another nearby area, which had significantly steeper slopes and crevices, were observed in April and May when the snowfalls of winter were melting. During February, when the incident occurred, there were no such conditions. An analysis of the terrain and the slopes showed that even if there could have been a very specific avalanche that found its way into the area, its path would have gone past the tent. The tent had collapsed from the side, but not in a horizontal direction. Dyatlov was an experienced skier and much older than Zolotov, and he was studying for his master's certificate in ski instruction and mountain hiking. Neither of these 2 men would have been likely to camp anywhere in the path of a potential avalanche. Footprint patterns leading away from the tent were inconsistent with someone, let alone a group of 9 people, running in a panic from either real or imagined danger. All of the footprints leading away from the tent and towards the woods were consistent with individuals who were walking at a normal pace. We also have the possibility of paradoxal undressing. Have you ever heard of that, Jay?
No, but I like it.
It's we've had it before in a situation where somebody was drowning and became hypothermic, correct? And then instead of freezing to death, they thought that they were burning to death.
Yeah, and so they take off their clothes. Paradoxal undressing is actually when you're dying of hypothermia and all of a sudden you think that your body's getting really hot, and so you take your clothes off.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It happens quite often. So they're thinking that it is undisputed that 6 of the 9 hikers died of hypothermia. Okay, but however, others in the group appeared to have acquired additional clothing, which suggests that they were sound enough in mind to try to add layers.
Agree. And I don't think that the 2 naked people, I don't think the one guy especially took his clothing off paradoxically, because the burn on the pants matching the burn on his legs that he clearly got from the fire near him at some point indicates those were taken off him.
For sure, because they were found on
the paradoxical undressing, I think, is just maybe a partial component to explain why, but I don't even think that fits.
No, I don't either. I don't think that they had a paradoxal undressing situation. I think that those victims were already gone.
Yeah,
and
I don't think they died naked.
No. I don't think that that's what caused the hypothermia. I think that they were already gone because of hypothermia, and the other survivors took their clothing to try to survive. How about catabolic winds? In 2019, a Swedish-Russian expedition was made to the site, and after investigations, they proposed that a violent catabolic wind was a plausible explanation for the incident.
Is that basically a Arctic hurricane of some kind? Is that what they mean, like gale force hurricane-type winds blowing through?
They're somewhat rare events, but they can be extremely violent. And they were implicated in 1978 in a case in the sorry, I lost my place. In a case at the Ural Mountain in Sweden, where 8 hikers were killed and 1 was severely injured in the aftermath of a catabolic wind. The topography of these locations were noted to be very similar, according to the expedition that was tracked. So it would have been, this type of wind would have made it impossible to remain in the tent, and the most rational course of action would have been for the hikers to cover the tent with snow and seek shelter behind the tree line. On top of the tent, there was also a torch left turned on, so like a lantern, possibly left there intentionally so the hikers could find their way back to the tent once the winds subsided. The expedition proposed that the group of hikers constructed 2 of those shelters that we were talking about, the circular type of...
They made their own igloo.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. One of which collapsed, leaving 4 of the hikers buried with the severe injuries that they observed. So that's a theory. Okay. There's also the theory, which I think is really interesting, is infrasound. Another hypothesis came in a 2013 book called Dead Mountain. And it is talking about how infrasound is capable of producing panic attacks in humans. So kind of like on your bad trip theory, there is some evidence to suggest that perhaps through military testing and things like that, infrasound was being tested, and it literally made them go crazy. That's that.
Well, there's your crazy theory.
Right.
So
there's also, this one, the military test.
Okay, that is a theory that I'm going to hop all over. So I'm glad you got to it.
Yeah.
Was there some sort of military camp nearby or base nearby? Well,
So in
the Russian government, I'm sure they can be trusted on how they've reported that incident.
especially in the 50s.
Mm-hmm. Right. In one speculation, the campsite fell within the path of a Soviet parachute mine exercise. This theory alleges that the hikers woke by loud explosions, fled the tent in a shoeless panic, and found themselves unable to return for supply retrieval. After some members froze to death attempting to endure the bombardment, others commandeered their clothing only to be fatally injured by subsequent parachute mine concussions. There are indeed records of parachute mines being tested by the Soviet military in the area around the time the hikers were there. Parachute mines detonate while still in the air rather than upon striking the Earth's surface and produce signature injuries similar to those experienced by the hikers. Heavily internal damage with relatively little external trauma. The theory coincides with reported sightings of glowing orange orbs floating or falling in the sky within the general vicinity of the hikers and allegedly photographed by them. Potentially military aircraft or descending parachute mines, this theory, among others, uses scavenging animals to explain some of Dubinina's injuries. Some speculate that the bodies were unnaturally manipulated on the basis of characteristic like rigor mortis, liver mortis, and markings discovered during an autopsy, as well as burns to the hair and skin. Photographs of the tent allegedly show that it was erected incorrectly, something the experienced hikers were unlikely to have done. So in other words, we're talking about a bit of a military cover-up here.
100% agree with that.
Yeah.
But I do also think, because you finally got to it theory-wise, I think that you had a military exercise that's a clear cover-up, which can now be explained by the fact that we have something weird that happened with this unexplained guy, possibly an agent of some kind, right? Who has no explanation to it. A person who's been buried who clearly isn't the person that was buried there under that name.
Right.
We have missing film from, or negatives from a camera. That
A missing diary
that the government would have a good reason to want to keep a hold of. I think that we can't discount the fact that those type of explosions can actually also cause avalanche type movements that may not have been an actual avalanche. So you may have snow movement that caused this, that caused people to start running out of the tent. They hear the parachute bomb things going off in the air. There starts to be some type of a small snow or landslide. It's not going to be a true avalanche because it isn't an area disposed naturally to go into avalanche and an avalanche.
And they weren't found under snow.
They weren't. And they make it to the tree line if there weren't already people in the tree line. I still personally believe that because there was some discord there to begin with and they were there for a length of time, that I think some people had in fact left the tent area and gone down to the tree line and had time to build a fire. I also I have not discounted the fact that actual military personnel were involved in this.
Yeah.
Landed after the fact with this whole cover-up piece and disposed of the eyeballs and pulled the tongue out to shut up the person who's managed to fucking live through this.
Right.
So that was my hope. As soon as I hear government conspiracy and Russia and the time frame.
Well, that all actually makes sense as opposed to my theory I was going to tell you about.
Okay.
So
wait, do we have all the theories?
Well, along with the military testing, though, is also a similar theory that alleges the testing of radiological weapons, and it's based partly on the discovery of radioactivity on some of the clothing, as well as the descriptions of the bodies by relatives as having orange skin and gray hair. However, radioactive dispersal would have affected all, not just some, of the hikers and equipment. And the skin and hair discoloration can be explained by the natural process of mummification after 3 months of exposure to the wind and cold. The initial suppression by Soviet authorities of files describing the group's disappearance is sometimes mentioned as evidence of a cover-up, but the concealment of information about domestic incidents was standard procedure in the USSR and thus far from peculiar. And by the late 1980s, all Dyatlov files had been released in some manner or another.
Except for negatives and diaries that are missing.
And that were donated in 1997 by relatives. Sure. Yeah.
So I think
Go ahead.
Option F would be that Solotov. Am I close?
The one with the Z.
Yeah. The one who didn't belong to
the one who
begin with.
didn't.
Zoltar.
Now.
Zoltov? Molotov.
That's a cocktail. A blowy up kind of one.
Before I get into this, these parachute mines, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
If they're, and I'm not an expert on explosives, but if of that magnitude, if they're giving off a massive concussion blast, that would leave some burns on people, but could also cause extreme internal damage without bruising on the outside. Okay, so Zoltar, Igor was the
Igor Dyatlov.
Not him. The one who didn't belong.
Okay.
The newbie.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think he found a relic, a book of some sort, and he knew to go to the Mountain of the Dead. Don't go there mountain. And did some sort of weird seance in the tent and summoned some supernatural occurrence.
I love you so much.
And that's what happened. And that's why they all shredded their way out of the tent and ran like hell and fought and tried to defend themselves. And the ones that survived were haunted by these supernatural beings of the Mountain of the Dead and ate their fucking eyeballs.
Oh, and also because they couldn't find his body, he was actually truly the demon that was summoned. It turned him into a Yeti.
Right. Or he just went home.
Or he just went home.
Right.
This is like some Indiana Jones
Exactly.
shit.
Exactly. And that's the one I like to stick to now.
Because it makes you feel
it
better.
Makes me feel better because it sounds like he was a shady guy and he brought his secret camera.
Yeah, that no one can
find and wasn't
his
supposed to be
secret
there.
diary that his diary wasn't a secret. It's just never been found,
Right. And
allegedly.
And his diary was like the Book of the Dead in the Mummy.
Oh, okay. I think you might have, if there's a TV producer listening to this, great. Now they're going to make millions off from creating another Indiana Jones type with Dyatlov Pass.
I'm going to stick with my military / avalanche cover-up because I think that's probably the most
How'd the guys get in the trees?
I think they climbed them. I think that
For
when
what purpose?
the parachute bombs went off, and these are going to be loud, and they're going to cause some movement of snow, that there is a panic moment, and either these are the people who, in my theory, were already down in the tree line and had a fire. They either climbed it, or they raced down the mountain. Because it also it's very interesting then that you have the two that look like they were going back up toward the tent. I don't know that anybody was staying in the tent at that point. I think they might have all been potentially in the tree line, and then they may have gone back up. Dyatlov and his girlfriend. The other two are dead, and then the other two.
There was two found by the tree, four found in the river.
The stream, right. And those are the ones that are wearing more clothes then. Mm-hmm. I have no idea. I can't come up with that theory in my brain yet of how much longer they may have lived, but I'm going to make the assumption, honestly, that they all died very quickly if you're talking about a military conspiracy, because I think that there were people there and they covered this thing up.
Very possible. I will say that throughout the years, you guys, there have been a lot of other researchers that looked at this. There's been a lot of discrepancy between the actual distance as measured in 1959 compared to what has been measured, in the 2015 investigations, then the 2019 investigation. So there is a lot of, also our tools are better now for measuring, different things. So there has been a lot of interest, a lot of investigation into this, but quite frankly, we will probably never know. But I'm more likely to believe the government cover-up.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, it's the fact that they exhumed that man's body and it wasn't him. He had no DNA match to his family. So either his mom, someone in the family had a real big secret, like they adopted this guy and told no one. Or he wasn't who he
said he was. He was using someone else's name.
Yeah.
Or he made it off the mountain alive after his military buddies and their little weird testing site things saved him and buried someone else in his place.
Right. I think he may have been involved with.
What if he was the one that made him go off course?
The strange lights and stuff
to begin with.
Just to get a little bit, I'm not going to go quite as far as you did, but they also used these parachute bombs as an explanation because that was a known explanation at the time. There's nothing to say that they weren't testing something far more nefarious, not just the radiation, but some type of new weapon.
Yep.
This is, in the cold, it's pre-Cold War. Pre-Cold War. But we'll clearly have enemies at this point in time, and why wouldn't that be a good place to test?
Pre-Cold War.
Yeah.
Where we're gearing up.
Yeah.
Testing is going to be done. And so, yes.
For nuclear weapons.
Right. And the radio,
radiation.
The radiation and stuff was like, well, no, if it was a radiation event, then it would have been all over all of them and all of the things. What were they testing? What was it? At the time, that's what they were saying.
And I guess I'd be interested to know, is this site cut off from civilization now? Can people still
no,
climb
people
and
can
go,
still go.
to? That's what I wondered. You know, have they ever found anything?
Why
Has
the
anybody?
hell would you?
Well, I don't think you would,
know.
but I think from a scientific perspective,
Wherever
you
we
could go and
if
test.
we're ever in a situation and some native person who doesn't speak English is just like going, no,
Right.
Don't go to
you
Death
don't go
Mountain.
there. I'm like, bye, we're done now.
For
We're
sure.
not going to go to
going
Death
home.
Mountain.
This is called Don't Go There
Right.
and Dead Mountain.
When I climb this mountain that I'm going to climb in July, should I make sure I know what its Native
Yes.
American
Yes,
name
yes.
is before I climb
Yes,
it?
we'll
Yes.
translate the name.
I'll do a quick check on that before I climb it.
Do you have a brain bath for
I do.
us?
I do. I have a brain bath stolen directly from Facebook from a page called the Paducah Insider.
Paducah?
Well, Paducah's an
The
area.
Paducah
It's a city.
Insider. I know, but it's just
Right-
somehow
right
it
in,
fits.
right in the Paducah.
It just
Well,
fits.
plus it's Paducah, Kentucky.
Oh,
So-
yeah, that makes
Y'all,
sense.
I don't know how you tell you this, but chaos broke out last night at Bottoms Up Gentlemen Club when veteran exotic dancer Lexus was arrested after a heated dispute with the club's DJ over his questionable song selections. She specifically asked for Buck Cherry, said one witness,
Sure.
and he played Nickelback instead.
Oh, that's not the same.
Things escalated fast. Lexus allegedly hurled a stiletto at the DJ booth, flipping over a tip jar, and tried to unplug the sound system mid-routine. "You can't expect a professional to work under these conditions," she shouted as police arrived.
Absolutely not. She had a routine.
Too crazy bitch by Buck
It
Cherry.
was.
Of
for
course, we
sure.
all know what it
That-
was.
We
They didn't
know
have
the
to
song.
name it.
No.
While DJ Ricky Bass Daddy Bradley defended his playlist, claiming he was trying to bring a rustic Kentucky vibe to the stage in the form of Nickelback, apparently.
No, that's
Well,
not
y'all,
what that does.
Lexus was released on bail early this morning and says she'll return to dancing once the DJ learns the difference between bad music and worse music. This is a developing story. Also of note, the Paducah Insider is a new satire and parody publication.
I saw that. I think
But
you
I
might, you
bet
might have
some-
sent that to me last
I
week.
did send
and
it
I'm
to
not
both
sure
of
that
you.
that's real.
But I
It's
bet
parody. It's parody.
something very similar.
Something
has
fucked up happened at a Kentucky strip club, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Does anything not fucked up happen at a Kentucky strip club? It doesn't seem like a normal
No.
It's been
situation
a
to
minute.
be in. Oh, when was the last time that you visited a Kentucky strip club?
The 90s.
God.
Oh,
right.
good Lord.
Well, hopefully you all really enjoyed our redo of this very fascinating, intriguing case, and really sorry for all of the victims that exited this world in such a mysterious and tragic way. I really
these
hope
were
it was quick for all of them.
adventure seekers that were on a hiking trip and wanting to, become better at their hobby, their craft, and it's sad and scary.
It is. Yes. So maybe be careful when you go hiking, guys, in the,
In the Ural Mountains in the Soviet Union,
Yeah.
former Soviet Union.
let's not do that.
I won't.
Let's just not do that.
I will not.
All right. Well, we also hope that you keep it curious.
And keep listening.
Till next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.